Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time and spending it here with us on NAC TV. I'm Eoin Devereux with the Banner Press, welcoming you to the April 11th edition of the newspaper and the program. Joined this week by fellow journalist Casper Wehrhahn. Casper, good to have you here for this week's edition.
Good to be here again on another show, and having another very packed paper to go through. So I'm excited to go through some of that today with everyone, and of course with yourself.
Most definitely. And when they say packed, we legitimately do mean that it was jam-packed. There were about 4 or 5 items that we wish we could have shared with you in this week's edition of the Banner Press, but there was absolutely no room within the 20 pages there. So that's why we always hope that if you're able to give us some support. If you're a local business, we always appreciate your advertising within the Banner Press. And if you're a local patron of the region, we always support or always appreciate your support picking up the paper in one of 30 different communities throughout Western Manitoba. It's your vision, your support that keeps us going. So thank you as always for that. And let's get into the pages of the Banner Press and talk about what we had to talk about to share with you this week. On the front page, wonderful story that we've been following for quite some time in relation to the establishment of Habitat for Humanity in Neepawa. It's something we debuted and talked about last year when they set up shop, as it were, in the area. And now they have hit a very important new stage of their development and establishment within Neepawa, in that they have named their first housing partner for 2025. Now, essentially, I very specifically use the term partner as well, because when it comes to Habitat for Humanity, there's so many misconceptions about what it's about. Some people think that you're just giving a house to somebody, and that couldn't be furthest from the truth. The truth is that the person and the family that get this house are partnering with Habitat for Humanity and are paying fair market value for the house. The difference is they're not getting charged the interests like you would in a credit union or in a bank or anything like that. They are paying their mortgage just like everyone else. In terms of that, they're paying it directly to Habitat for Humanity, and they are actually helping in one way or another with the construction of the house. They call it sweat equity type thing, where you have to put in a certain amount of time, a certain amount of hours, either to help with the building and construction of the house or helping in the community. That's the great thing about this. You know, if you don't know how to put a hammer to a nail, that's fine. That's all right. You can still help out by helping out in your community in some other capacity. That's the wonderful thing about Habitat for Humanity. It gives not only to the individual, but it gives to the community as a whole. That is a fantastic setup, and we're very happy to be able to sort of share the first time they're going to go through with this. On a recent meeting they held on Tuesday, April 8th, they announced the inaugural partner family that is going to be part of it, and it's going to be Rochelle Quinzone. If I mispronounce that, Rochelle, I do apologize there. She and her daughter, who live in Neepawa, are going to be the partners in this. Rochelle also has a son who is still based in Philippines right now. And speaking to her after the announcement, she said this is an opportunity because it's potentially going to allow her to be able to bring her son, her family, over from the Philippines into Canada. There was so much uncertainty because, you know, when you have to rent, when you don't know what's happening one month after another type thing for new arrivals in Canada, this creates stability where she's going to be able to reunite the family. That's that type of good news story, Casper, I think is really, I'm very happy to be able to share that. And having experienced Habitat for Humanity in my former location in Portage La Prairie and seen all the good they did there, it's great to see it starting up here.
Absolutely, yeah. It's it's quite the group. If you're not familiar with it, I mean, definitely look up some information. I mean, we have some good information in the paper as it is right here, and of course we did a past story as well. kind of going into the details of how exactly that works. And I mean, yeah, it's just good to have this chapter start up here locally and really start to be able to hit the ground running, as it were, because yes, they've been doing a lot of work up until now already, but this really lets them get going now, because again, the houses are fitted to the specifications of the family's needs, right? So you can only do so much planning for the house without knowing who it's for, right? So now that they have this family, they have it nailed down, how many people is going to need to be in there for like bedrooms, etc. They can actually work that out now, do up the layout, and get all that construction growing. And of course, they do have to work around the industry here, the agricultural industry. They have that very much at the top of their mind there, so they're working around that there. But yeah, just having this as another option for the growth of the community, just to help people out, get their feet under them, and well, really get started on building their homes for their families.
That's right. The concept of home ownership is still something very important for families that are trying to enrich themselves and entrench themselves within a community. It's changed over the last 20, 30 years. And let's be honest, it's not as easy as it was back in the day. I've said this a couple times, and I still genuinely believe it. I think in the 90s, myself, it would have been easier for an individual such as myself to purchase a home in the late 90s, early 2000s, than it would be for an individual such as myself right now to be able to purchase the home. Even though I am in a better financial place than I was as a punk 20-some-odd-year-old kid, and more entrenched and set in my community than I was back then. But it's harder for one reason or another. The market has gotten very high on a lot of housing, and that's not fair to anyone or everyone. And so to be able to see something like this with Habitat for Humanity and a family that's starting out and is giving to their community, Rochelle works so hard in this community, and that's why I think you need to pick up a copy of the Banner Press to learn a little bit about her story, all the trials and tribulations she's gone through here, and how wonderful it is that she's going to be getting this opportunity, this partnership opportunity. There was one thing, I talked to Dom Wansley about this. He's one of the members of the steering committee, and he was very specific, and I wanted to use this term in the story, which I did. This is not a gift. It is an earned opportunity, a partnership between two sides in which everyone is getting the benefits of this. The partner in question pays the mortgage to Habitat for Humanity, which feeds into Habitat for Humanity to be able to go on to the next phase and build another home and another one after that. So this is something that is going to create some viability in the housing market within Neepawa. It's not going to solve the housing market in Neepawa, don't get me wrong. You know, they can only do it one house at a time, but it's definitely helping out in a big way. I'm so appreciative that I was able to be there, learn a little bit more about it, and to share this story with you. So if you want to find that, you can find it on page 1 of this week's edition of the Banner and Press. And we're going to continue to follow, and very much going to be continuing to follow all the way up until the ribbon cutting or the handing over the keys, or however they want to do it. So wonderful to share. All right, let's get into some of the other aspects of what's going on right now. And a lot of the focus right now is on politics. We have the federal election in full swing for Riding Mountain and the rest of Canada. Now, if you looked at last week's edition of the Banner and Press, you saw that we did have basic candidate profiles on every individual candidate that we knew of at that time. We had 4 in last week's edition. It was Dan Mazur, Terry Hayward, Liz Clayton, and Don McKenna for the People's Party of Canada. After we went to print, there was a sudden change. Due to family responsibilities or whatnot, Donnan is unable to run in the riding, so a new individual, Jim Oliver, is actually stepped up for the PPC. In the interest of fairness, we wanted to make sure, so we put in an exact similar style of candidate introduction, candidate profile, into this week's newspaper. And we're going to do it again next week because after the deadline, after everything was said and done, Andy Maxwell, I think is the name of the gentleman, was announced as the candidate for Riding Mountain for the NDP. So we're going to have that most likely in next week's paper. And as well, because they were a little late, we're going to have full stories on Maxwell and Oliver in next week's edition of the Neepawa Banner Press. Having said that, that means we've got 3 candidate features on these other candidates in this week's edition. I'm talking about Dan Mazer of the Conservative Party, I'm talking about Terry Hayward of the Liberal Party, and Liz Clayton of the Green Party. So let's get a little back and forth going here, Casper. I did the story in regards to Dan Mazer, you did the story in regards to Terry Hayward, and our newest reporter, Josh Jackson, did the story in regards to the Green Party candidate, Liz Clayton. Having said that, don't read anything into it. That doesn't mean that's who we're supporting, all right?
Yeah, this is just us doing our job as reporters, talking to these individuals, kind of getting a feel for what they're all about and sharing that information with you. So the byline there, that's just us doing our jobs. It's not sort of any endorsement, and hopefully people understand that.
Yeah. Having said that, though, don't forget, we're really good at our jobs. So, if we wrote a little bit of powerful prose for the candidate, that's just us being good at what we do type thing, Don't let it sway your final decision. Let your decision sort of on the facts decide, as opposed to my word elegance.
Yes.
All right, I gotta keep that phrase in my vernacular now.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a keeper. But again, let's go into the candidates here. Dan Mazer, we're all familiar with. He is our candidate for the PC, not the PC party. Nationally, they're the Conservative Party. He is looking for re-election. We know all about Dan and what he's about and what the Conservatives are about this election. He very much is passionate about rural Manitoba and rural Canada and the issues that affect us directly, which is what we want from our representative as a member of Parliament. So if you get a chance, just acquaint yourself with what the platform is for the Conservative Party and for Dan Mazer this time out. And do the same as well for Casper in terms of your discussion with Terry Hayward, and introduction as well to the area.
Yeah, absolutely. Because of course Terry is a newer candidate to this riding, has kind of been in the area because of places that he's lived. I mean, he's been in Brandon and Holland, so kind of around here, but just sort of on the border there. But yeah, new to running in this riding here, the former Dauphin, Swan River, Neepawa, and now of course Riding Mountain. So just getting a little bit of background on him, of course, and a little bit of his knowledge on the area, what sort of industry is in here. And he pointed out, of course, a number there, including High Life here and the new tomato growery, which I kind of looked into a little bit, and that's pretty cool. And obviously some background as well, because, people in this riding likely aren't familiar with him. So, a bit of his past experience. He's run in some previous elections for the Liberal Party, one of them actually for Brandon. And then, of course, he had some different political experience as well, which was kind of interesting, in my opinion, to learn about. Mostly had to do with trade and agriculture there, served on a national level. So that was, a little bit interesting to get to know him on that. The main issue that he really talked about there were some others that he did hear about when he was going out and about on his tours, he said, but the main one that he really talked about with me was, of course, with the tariffs and all that. So again, trade stuff. So maybe he'll bring some interesting insight to all of that discussion that people might be curious about, especially with relation to agriculture. This is a big ag area, of course, so we'll see. But definitely think of, questions that you want to ask these people, right? Not just Terry, but everybody. What are some issues that, are at the forefront of your mind? What are things that you're concerned about that you want to make sure that the party is going to be advocating for in the way that sort of fits with your ideals. Because remember, at the end of the day, these people are supposed to be representing you and what you're looking to vote for, what you want to see in the government. So yeah, think of stuff, reach out to them, ask questions.
That's right. And of course, we do also have the third candidate in this week's edition, Liz Clayton, who is representing the Green Party, and actually brand new to the riding as well. When we reshaped and renamed as Riding Mountain, we also changed the borders on the district slightly, and a portion of her area, a little closer to Portage Lisgard, actually has now been moved over into Riding Mountain. So she is brand new to the area, although she is in the area. So we had a chance to speak with her about her experiences, previous experiences in the political spectrum, as it were, what she thinks the Green Party brings to the table in regard to national policy. And again, people sort of, Green Party always sort of gets pegged as the one-note party, as environmental. And Liz explains that it's not like that anymore. This is not the same Green Party from its humble beginnings back in the day. They have expanded their roots. They have expanded their range. They understand that you cannot be a one policy or one issue party. And you have to be able to expand and represent each and all the different topics and issues that affect every single Canadian. So she does do a very decent explanation, I thought, in regards to that expansion and what it means to you, the average rural voter. So if you get a chance, if you're still a little undecided on who you're going to vote for, take a few minutes, learn a little bit about each and every candidate in this week's edition of the Banner Press, and of course next week's edition of the Banner Press, where we'll have the People's Party and the NDP candidates in there as well. So I don't know, Casper, what's your take on that so far? I think coverage-wise, we've done a pretty decent job of trying to get the message out there. But in the last couple of weeks, what's your take on how it's been going?
I think it's been going good, yeah. I mean, we've had some good opportunities to reach out to each of the candidates there. And while we weren't able to have everybody in this week, of course, just due to, being able to get responses back in time and, of course, space, not to mention the space. I think we've been doing pretty good that way. I mean, we've got some other questions that are going to be appearing with answers in future edition of the paper there that hopefully will inform people a little bit more as to who they want to vote for in this election, which is coming up really fast, actually.
Yep. And of course, I'm going to bring this up for you as well here. This is not something we usually do on the Story Behind the Stories, but I'm just going to quickly bring up the letters we received in this week's edition, because there were two letters from two individuals, and they were both in regards to the same topic: the national broadcaster, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and its significance in Canada, or if it still has significance in Canada. And I thought it was interesting because they both take sort of slightly different stances on it. One sees the value and the importance to have a national broadcaster. The other one doesn't see it as well, doesn't think it has that same significance as it did maybe 30 years ago, and believes that maybe it needs to be put on the ballot as a direct point, something we as individuals need to maybe discuss ourselves. So I thought it was kind of interesting to see both sides on that and to be able to share them both on the same page there, Casper.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's a topic that I find interesting as well, because I'm not someone that has a whole lot of experience with the CBC. I mean, of course, growing up, it's all just like cartoons and stuff. But, I mean, yeah, we had a cable, but I didn't really pay attention to a whole lot of channels. And now we don't have cable, so parents, they use a CBC now, CBC Gem, I believe.
Yeah.
So we do have a lot more CBC in the household now. Again, still don't have a whole lot of experience with it, just because, I go off, I do my own things, I tinker with stuff or whatever. Play games.
Yep.
But it's interesting to see people's different takes on it, right? Yep. And something that I've heard a lot is actually that the radio has really good value, and people, I think the consensus for that, agree pretty well on that. And then more of the disparity comes with relation to the shows and coverage of stuff. That part kind of goes back and forth a lot more, and there doesn't seem to be a strong consensus one way or the other. So, I'm pretty curious on it myself.
That's right. And again, if you're a loyal and consistent viewer of the story behind the stories, you most likely know my thoughts on the CBC in regards to television. I'm not the biggest fan anymore, although I am of that generation that grew up while the CBC TV was at its fullest of values. You had national programming. I remember Tommy Hunter. I remember Wayne and Schuster. I remember, I think it was called Codco, and The Kids in the Hall, and Hockey Night in Canada, back when it was still on the CBC. I remember all these little things. Danger Bay. Now, Casper's just looking at me right now saying, you're just putting random words together. These were programs, yes. And of course, I am still remember Mr. Dress Up. First run episodes of Mr. Dress Up on the CBC.
Yeah.
So, and that had great value. Although maybe it isn't that anymore. It is not its pinnacle anymore, to be honest with you. But again, that's just my opinion on it. That doesn't have to be yours. It doesn't have to be Casper's. And I agree with Casper. I still believe CBC Radio has tremendous value, and I think is a great asset to Canada. But I'm an old radio guy, so you got to take that opinion with a grain of salt. But, but that's why we want to hear from you. If you have any opinions on the politics of Canada, the CBC, give us a letter. Send us a letter our way. We always do appreciate hearing your perspective on what we talk about in the pages of the Banner Press.
Absolutely. And semi-related, maybe. One thing to throw out for you, just for sense of nostalgia, see who remembers. PBS Kids. Do you remember watching stuff for PBS Kids? I do. Anyway.
Oh, man. We are going down the rabbit hole right now. Now we're gonna get into PBS. Some of you are going to know exactly what I'm talking about here. Are You Being Served? Monty Python's Flying Circus, Keeping Up Appearances, and of course, every Sunday, Doctor Who.
Oh, yes.
Some of you have no idea what I'm talking about, but those of you that are in the know, we know. All right, let's get back. Let's get away from that television and back onto our own television and talking about some of the stories we got in this week's paper. Casper, you got me optimistic about the spring because you've got a story in there about some optimistic flower season on the go coming up soon.
Absolutely, yes. And optimistic indeed, because this spring really has been back and forth with weather. And I think sometime earlier this week I heard rumor there was supposed to be more snowfall. I hope that's wrong and it's just rain. I really just want it to be rain if it's going to be anything. It's just time, right? Let's get on away from the snow. But yes, I did have a very good talk with Glenda McPhee of Garden View Farm, just outside of Neepawa, 2 miles down the road there on, I believe it was Road 86, which I don't actually state in the story, but that comes up with the location there. And just taking a look at how preparations are going into the flower season here, of course, into the fuller spring, as it were, as the weather begins to get more consistent, and then, of course, the summer when things really get popping there. And, I mean, things are going well. There's full greenhouses and stuff starting to come to life out in the gardens there. And just learning a bit more about the 2025 outlook, some things that she's got going on, looking to get into more so that she maybe dabbled in a little bit before, and is hoping to expand that a bit more. And some personal projects as well that she uses as educational value too, which I thought was interesting. You can take a look at that on page 14 there and learn more about that, because I don't want to spoil it for you. And a neat program as well she talked about was the senior sponsorship program that she does, which really just gets flowers out to people in country meadows. She says everyone deserves flowers. I mean, they're beautiful, and seeing flowers, they just make you happy. But looking forward to a collaboration actually with that program with Touchwood perhaps. So some really exciting stuff there, and well, hopefully people check it out. And I'm excited to see how things turn out this year, not just for Garden View, but for the people in the wider area as well that also do flower business, agriculture business, and that sort of thing. So hopefully it'll be a very good season.
Most definitely, and hopefully it will be a very good season very soon. We've had a little bit of, it felt like a late winter, it's just dragged out a bit, but now we're starting to see the streets again. We're starting to discover our lawns once again. Very much looking forward to sort of rediscovering yard work, and very much hoping to be able to sort of take advantage of the warm weather. There's so much more we could talk about, but there's only so much time. And that's why you always need to pick up a copy of the Banner Press, because we haven't even touched on our special feature this week, Cancer Awareness Month throughout all of April. We didn't get a chance to delve in deep about the Arden Mixed Bonspiel, which recently occurred, or Casper, your pictures on the Women in Business Paint Night that was recently hosted at Arts Forward. We just barely scratched the surface of what's on the pages of this week's paper. That's why it's always important for you to pick up a copy of the Banner Press. 30 different communities throughout Western Manitoba where you're able to pick up a physical copy of the newspaper. And always remember, if you're not able to pick up a physical copy, you can always find it online at neepawabanner.com. Once again, that is neepawabanner.com. We already got so much we're working on for next week's edition, but we could always use a little bit more. So if you have any story suggestions or ideas, it's always appreciated. You can give us a call at 476-3401 or at news@neepawabanner.com. So that pretty much wraps it up for this week. Casper, as always, appreciate you sort of walking us through the week.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, and looking forward to another one with lots more stories to go through.
And we thank you as well. We're not here if you're not here. We appreciate you so much. And thank you for the support for the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you for the support for NAC TV. And thank you for the support right here on The Story Behind the Stories. Have yourselves another fantastic week.